to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta, and today I'm here with Heather Gray. So Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks. It's funny. I used to have a podcast called Talking Shit with Heather. So I love the name of your podcast.
Well, thank you.
I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I know that's a mouthful. Bioenergetic practitioner, a stand-up comedian, and podcast host. And after overcoming 27 years of undiagnosed Lyme disease, mold toxicity, 2 suicide attempts, losing over 100 pounds and reversing 2 autoimmune diseases, I went back to school and became a functional practitioner and have, really dive deep into the space of wellness, to get my own life back and then to help others get theirs back as well, because there are too many people out there needlessly suffering. And a lot of it has to do with mindset and lifestyle changes. So I am a big proponent of going back to the basics.
Wow, and quite an intro. I must say, I'm impressed you got it all in there. Like, I mean,
it's not my first rodeo. It's not my first rodeo. I'm a podcast host. I've done over 250 episodes, and then I've probably been interviewed now, 50, 60 times. So
you are a veteran for sure.
Yep.
So I don't mess it up. It's a functional diagnostic nutritionist. Is that what you said?
Correct. Practitioner. You can't end on the nutritionist because technically I'm not a licensed nutritionist. So you have to land on the practitioner. Otherwise I get in trouble.
Gotcha. Practitioner part. Okay. So what is that? Tell us more about it.
So it's diving deeper into root causes, right? Sadly, unfortunately, Western med has a tendency to just want to throw pills at things or cut things out. And they've really fallen short when it comes to chronic illness and prevention. And so, take vitamin D for instance. So like the regular reference range for vitamin D is like between 30 and 60. But functional range is between 60 and 80 because we really want you functioning. If you think about it, the regular, reference ranges are pulled from a group of, society. And there's a lot of people out there who aren't well, so that kind of skews the results downwards to begin with. And then in Western med, they're really only looking at disease processes. And like I said, functional medicine, we really want you functioning. So it's taking a deeper look into factors and barriers to health, like parasites, heavy metals, environmental toxins, mindset, how your gut's working, balancing hormones. So just really getting into the nuts and bolts of how the body works instead of just throwing Band-Aids at symptoms.
No, I love that. That's fascinating. And apparently this is meant to be the topic this week because like I told you, the gal I talked to last week was talking about a functional medicine doctor. So like this is apparently like where we're meant to be this week. So you talked very briefly at the beginning, obviously, that you went through your own chronic illness. So take us on that journey. What happened? I think you said 27 diagnoses?
No, I was undiagnosed for 27 years.
Apologies. Undiagnosed for 27 years. Okay. Wow. Well, that's a long time to go undiagnosed.
It is. Yeah. So I usually start the story at the beginning. I was basically born full of shit. There's a lot of people who can relate to being constipated at a very young age, right? And I would sit on the potty for so long, my feet would fall asleep. And at the time, nobody was trying to figure out why this 4-year-old couldn't poop. They were just throwing Band-Aids at symptoms, stool softeners, laxatives, nasty thick oils. Hindsight's 2020. That was the year my uncle committed suicide. And that was also the year my grandmother died of breast cancer and I was being raised by alcoholic addicts. So needless to say, I had a lot of early childhood trauma and I'm pretty sure that kicked in my celiac gene and I was eating a standard American diet or the SAD diet as we call it at the time. So it kind of set me up to be a good host, fast forward quite a few years. Now I've got a leaky gut. I've got gut inflammation. I'm pretty sure I was living in a moldy home at one point as well. And then the early childhood trauma just set me up to be the perfect host so that when I was bit by a tick when I was 13, I contracted Lyme disease. It's never typically a cause and effect. Just because you get bit by a tick who has Lyme disease doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. We've actually co-evolved with this bacteria for thousands of years. Our body, when it's working properly, knows how to put it in its place. Sadly, my body was not working properly. I was constipated. I was sick. A lot of early childhood trauma. So my body was in fight or flight all the time. And so, 2 years went by and I had my first suicide attempt. Again, nobody trying to figure out why this 15-year-old was trying to off herself. And so, story continues like that for quite a few more years. Finally, I'm 34 years old, 27 years had gone by, and I finally get diagnosed. That was back in 2013. And then, like I said, by the time it was all said and done, I was diagnosed with Lyme, mold, heavy metals, parasites, 3 autoimmune diseases, 100 pounds overweight. And there was a lot to peel back. I was a silly little hairstylist for 15 years, and I heard on a podcast the founder of FDN speaking about how you have to make sure your detox pathways are open. You got to make sure your hormones are balanced and that your gut is healed. And for some reason, that made a lot of sense to me. Intuitively, I knew that was my path. And so I went through FDN and started peeling back the layers to my health journey. Since then, I've also added like somatic experiencing work, breath work, mindfulness, meditation, tapping, because that is almost a bigger that really should go first than a lot of focusing on the physical. We're so used to being able to focus on the physical that touching the emotions and the traumas, people are like, no, it seems so nebulous, but really it's the place you kind of want to start. So between putting that together and the functional, I've, like I said, put Lyme in remission. I've reversed 2 autoimmune diseases, lost over 100 pounds, and I'm no longer suicidal.
I mean, all very important, but I think that last one is probably the most important. Absolutely. Wow. Like, I think it's, at least for me, because I've always grown up in the woods, like getting bit by a tick and getting Lyme disease was always kind of like an underlying fear, like, oh my God, get them off me. But whenever you really talk to people, like the chances of actually getting it is actually, from my understanding, not as drastic as we think it is. And like you were talking about, you're
not necessarily, but it doesn't necessarily have to go to the bad places that it can go if your immune system is nice and robust and doing its job.
Can you elaborate on that some more?
Yeah. So, like I said, they found it in the an Italian mummy in the Alps over 3,000 years ago. It had Lyme disease in his system. So we have co-evolved with this bacteria for thousands of years. Our body, knows how to kind of put it in its place when we're working optimally. But when we've overstressed, antibiotics, birth control, other medications, eating a poor diet, not getting proper sleep, constipated, all the things that kind of wears on our immune system sets us up to be a quote unquote good host. This is more than just the germ theory. This is the terrain theory. If your fish gets sick, do you throw out the fish or do you change the dirty water? It's the difference between like the germ theory and the
that's a good comparison.
You treat the fish. Sorry, do you treat the fish or do you clean the fish tank? So that's the terrain theory kind of versus the germ theory. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of the germ theory anymore. Everything that I've learned, it's really, you got to set yourself up to be a good, healthy person. And then a lot of these things you don't have to worry about.
Yeah. Just because myself, I know when you started tapping, it did feel really weird. I felt so weird when I started tapping.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny is that's the first tool I will pull out with people who are in crisis, but it's the last tool I think about to use for myself. For some reason, I can never remember to use it for myself. Although I have a new app called the Tapping Solution that Tony Robbins recommended in his last book. And so it's got like little daily tapping exercises. Some of them is 2 minutes long. Some of them are 15 minutes long. Been really, really helpful. But yeah, no, it does feel kind of funny. But I actually love acupuncture and always have. And so, knowing that tapping on these points actually hits these meridians, it kind of helps disrupt the message we've been telling ourselves for so long. I'm not normally so bad with words, but I don't normally do interviews this late, and I'm starting to see why. I'm like, my brain's like, no, it's late. I should be done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
no,
thank you for being here anyway.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So I know you talked about a whole bunch of different things. So do you attribute the way that you were able to get over, or I don't want to say get over, but cure part of your autoimmune diseases and get rid of your suicidal ideations to everything you were doing? Or was it certain aspects that you think helped cure you?
So can't use the word cure because I am not a doctor. And when you've had Lyme for as long as I have, you really don't cure it, and you really don't cure your autoimmune. You put them in remission,
Got it.
and it's your lifestyle, your daily lifestyle that keeps it in remission. So many people are like, when can I go back to eating? And when can I go back to acting like? And I'm like, well, it depends. Do you want to go back to the old way of life and being sick? Because part of that is why you're here. And so I really try to connect the dots for people again, that it's not just no cause and effect. Look at COVID, for example. The comorbidities, the people who died with COVID were people who were obese, who had diabetes, who were older, right? Healthier young people really didn't die from COVID. So it's no different. If you're got a healthy, robust immune system doing its job, like I said, you do a decent job. And then so yeah, it was, lifestyle. I had to change my diet. I had to stop eating processed food. I had to stop eating takeout. I had to stop drinking soda. I had to make sure I was getting to bed at a decent time every night so that my body and my brain can detox. Most people don't realize there's a physiological time period in the evening that your body and your brain and your liver detox. And if you stay up too late, you miss out on that chance to detox. And so then it's cumulative, right? All the years of all the badness, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have an autoimmune disease. No, this has actually been in the process making 10, 15, 5 years before you actually start showing a symptom.
I didn't realize
So
there was like a window. Like I figured if you just got like the sleep that you needed, that's good, but there's actually a window.
yeah,
Okay.
there's actually a window. And I used to know it by heart, and it's been a while since I've looked at it. You'll have to look it up. But yeah, it was like between like 12 and 2 is when the brain detoxes, and between like 2 and 3 is when the liver detoxes. I don't know. That's not exact. I'm just pulling it out for example. But yes, so they
That's
say
fascinating.
a window, is really, you want to try to get to bed by 10 p.m. every night. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, 10 p.m. But think about nature, right? When does, the sun starts to go down? Just because we have all this artificial light doesn't mean that we're supposed to be up to the, wee ends hours of the mornings. We are still a part of nature, and we are diurnal beings, which means there's 2 cycles, nighttime, daytime, 2 diurnal, and when the sun goes down, the temperature drops. These are all signals. The darkness, these are all signals telling our body, hey, you need to start producing melatonin now so that you can sleep. So many people with sleep issues these days, and it sometimes can be just as simple as getting off your electronics an hour to 2 hours before bed, wearing blue blocking glasses so that whatever light you have coming in is not disrupting your circadian rhythm and your melatonin, and dropping the temperature in your house. And all these signals tell your body, hey, it's time to get ready for bed. But we've gotten so far off the path of how humans are supposed to live that we're now seeing it come back with a vengeance, with all the autoimmune and the mental health issues and the obesity, the diabetes, the cancer. It's insane.
Yeah. So just so I didn't miss it, was it a combo of all the things that really helped you repair everything?
Absolutely. There's never one way to treatment. And that's by not focusing on treatment is how I got better. Most people, sadly, still just focus on treatment. We've been conditioned. I have cancer. I do chemo. I have Lyme. I do antibiotics. No, again, there's a reason that you got sick to begin with, and going back to the basics and to the foundations and dialing all those things in first will help you. Then when you do go to get treatment, it'll help your treatment work just that much better, and it'll help you stay better longer, have a longevity.
So for people who are just starting out on a journey dealing with a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease, where would you recommend they start?
I can't remember where I heard this expression, but I love it. Addition through subtraction. So most people want to start off by detoxing or killing things first. And I really want to start by supporting and building up the body first. So there are so many toxins like in scented candles, perfume, laundry, fabric softener. So anything chemical scented that you have in your house, start removing these things out of your environment first. If you, and it just can be little things like 2 or 3 things, a month. And these small steps add up to big wins. And so like if you run out of your deodorant that has aluminum, next time you buy it, right, step up to one that's aluminum free, preservative free. Same thing with your body care stuff. But, getting as many chemicals off the body is gonna help you in the long run. They're starting to find out that a lot of these chemicals, they call them obesogens. Listen to the name, obesogens. They're actually causing people to gain weight and having them not being able to lose it. It also disrupts your endocrine system, which makes your hormones. So if you're having problems with your hormones, looking at the chemicals that you have in your environment and getting rid of plastics and switching to glass, buying a good water filter, because we are 70% water, so starting off with good, clean water is always like a first step. So those are some of the first little things I have people start working on.
Love it. I mean, it's things that I honestly wouldn't have even think about, like, oh, let's remove this and let's do this. Water makes sense to me, but like, I don't think I would have thought about, like, let me change my fabric softener. Let me change this.
Yep, absolutely. I switched to wool balls a long time ago. You buy one and they literally last you for 3 years. 3 years, and it's all natural, and it static free, makes your clothes nice and soft without all the chemicals. It's a natural product. I love them. I love them. I love them. And then you're also not adding more trash to the environment as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the plastic situation is definitely very sad, to say the least. To say the least. So you mentioned in your pre-interview that your son also had some kind of mysterious health problems. So what happened with him?
I mean, geez, he was 2 weeks before his second birthday, he was diagnosed with celiac disease, and he had lost like 10 pounds in a week. And for a little kid, that's a lot of weight really fast. Yeah. And his tummy was so bloated. He looked like a little pregnant person, and the stomach muscles actually separated because they had been so bloated for so long. But so yeah, he finally got diagnosed with Lyme disease or celiac. And then as he got older, he started transitioning. So started off as my little girl into a little boy. And, there's some people there's talks and research now going into how some of these heavy metals might contribute to some of this stuff, because it takes up places in our receptors that hormones are supposed to be. So if our hormones are supposed to be in a place where heavy metals are now binding, because when I was pregnant with him, I was undiagnosed. I had no idea I had Lyme disease and mold toxicity and heavy metals. And so I can't help but wonder if some of the, the sicknesses that I went through, and the fact that I wasn't a very robust, healthy woman to begin with, I set him up for not very, didn't set him up for success when it came to the health. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, they do talk about that, how much can be passed through the mother to the fetus. I mean, they tell us all the things to worry about why we're pregnant. So, I mean, that's a valid concern, but I assume he's healthy now.
Yeah, he's 21. He's doing great.
21. Good for him. Well, glad to hear that. So you're also an author, and like you said, a podcast host. Tell us about those ventures.
The author thing I don't talk about much, because it was a BS thing of I got duped. I paid way too much money to co-author a chapter in a book. But I can at least say I'm a published author, but it pisses me off. But yes, I am a stand-up comedian as of this year. I've had quite a few gigs, and I tour with a group called Moms Unhinged. There's like 50 of us all across the nation. And at any given night, there could be like 3 shows across the United States, which is awesome.
Love the name.
Yeah, right. And then, yes, I am the host of Renegade Health Boss podcast, where I've had some of the top health experts, but we're not just talking like health. We're talking mindset, and I mean, everything that has to do with living a healthy, happy life. We dissect, because a lot of this stuff isn't common knowledge, unfortunately. Like you were like, I never thought to look into that, So I'm really trying to bring that stuff to the forefront, because when people start waking up, they can start choosing with their dollar, their wallets, and start making different decisions. And, hopefully we can start changing, how toxic and sick right now Americans are.
Yeah. I mean, mindset is huge. I got my first book about mindset from my dad when I was going into college. So I always love this topic.
What was that?
It's called Wherever You Go, There You Are by John Kabat-Zinn.
Nice.
And he still remains one of my favorite authors. But But yeah.
Have you chased him down to get on your show yet?
He is harder to contact. Like trying to find his contact information is difficult. I don't know if it's just because he's older
Mm,
or he's just smart because he's hiding away. But I would love to have him on the show. That would be fantastic.
gotcha.
And since you listen to Tony Robbins, I'm assuming you listened to the episode when he had Eckhart Tolle on.
I've read Eckhart Tolle's books. I have not. I haven't listened to his podcast. I just got done finishing his book Life Force, which was, that was a ginormous book, but incredible. A lot of full of biohacking, tips and tricks, and a lot of the stuff was over my head. A lot of it wasn't. But it was just good to know that if I come down with something super super scary, that there's specific. Clinics, that have got these really cool tools to help overcome things like cancer and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. I'm already doing the preventative stuff, but God forbid if I do get it, I know it's not a death sentence, that there's places that I can go.
Yeah, that's always a good feeling. So do you have a favorite book when it comes to like mindset or just something that's really changed your life or changed how you think about things?
Oh my gosh, so much. But like my clients, prereq to work with me, they have to read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
That's a fantastic book.
In the title, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. If nothing changes, nothing changes. I mean, geez, my bookshelf in the other room is like full. And right now I'm drawing a blank. Untethered Soul was another really good one I loved. Breathe by James Nestor talks a lot about the power of breath and mindset and how all that's connected. That was actually really awesome. I know I'm missing some good stuff right now, but we'll just stick with Dr. Joe.
Dr. Joe. Yeah. We jokingly call him Daddy Joe just because.
I just had his head research doctor actually on my podcast. Actually, the episode came out 2 days ago. Hemal Patel.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's called The Science of Meditation or The Science Behind Meditation, something like that. But yeah,
that's the name of the episode, so people can go listen to it.
Yep, it's absolutely fascinating. He just is the work that they're doing and to be able that they're, he's the movie The Source they came out with shows a lot of this stuff. The actual data, they're taking saliva and hair and blood samples from people before they go into this week-long intensive meditation retreat. And then they're taking everything afterwards and seeing how the brain has changed and how cortisol levels have come down and the stress hormones have come down. And it's absolutely amazing to see quantifiably, how much mindset and meditation and these types of things have effect on the body.
Yeah, I think you're the second guest. I think one of my first guests of the season mentioned that too. So I have to watch that. I have not watched it yet.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm going to have to watch it. Okay. Crippling it down again. So it sounds like the comedian is a newer adventure. Did you say it was just your first year?
Yeah, I graduated comedy class in May and had my first paid gig in June in front of 200 women, which is like not heard of. Like my stand-up, nothing has ever really come easy in my life, but for some reason, getting into this world, like doors have opened. Like my path has not been a typical stand-up's path where they're like grinding for 3 years and they're broke and they're this and they're that. And I've already had 20 paid gigs this year from May to December.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been it's tough. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. Memorizing a bit and coming up with the work, and I'm writing. I don't really care to write. So to get me to sit down and write can be really hard because I'm just like, no, I don't want to do this. But if nothing ever came out of it, I am atypical. So there is a couple like themes that I've seen with people who have chronic illnesses. One, they have a tendency to be type A personality, right? And burning the candle at both ends. And I was no exception to that. And so I was always very wound tight, as I was told. And if nothing else comes out of the comedy stuff, it has given me a new lease on life where I am showing up on a daily basis, completely unabashedly myself. And I'm more playful with people around me. Like the last flight that I took, the flight attendant was on the announcement and he said something funky and he screwed up and I started laughing. And then I said something sarcastic and he started laughing so hard that he actually couldn't finish his announcement. And I thought, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble. But as I was leaving the plane, he like gives me a big high five. He's like, thank you. I needed that laugh today. And my heart, I was just like on cloud nine. I'm like,
I love that.
There was another time I was in New York. I saw my first Broadway show, and this elevator was like the size of a freaking apartment building. And I just started running around it like a wild child. Next thing I know, this crazy woman starts joining me. And I've got this total stranger running in circles with me in the freaking elevator. Like, we have forgotten as adults how to play. And really, that is
we have
kind of step one to healing, is finding time to play and getting downtime. Because that's part of the reason why, like I said, we're kind of in the shape that we're in, especially Americans. So like I said, if nothing ever comes out of the comedy, the gifts that it's given me on a day-to-day basis have been incredible.
What sparked you going? Like, what made you go, I want to be a stand-up comedian all of a sudden?
Never in a million years. So I belong to a lot of networking groups, and one of them was around health practitioners. And this one guy, and I knew off of Zoom. I found out he was just living in Boulder, which is just a town away from me. He's a chiropractor. I'm like, let's meet for lunch. Sure. So I meet in person within 5 minutes. I didn't know this at the time. He's a stand-up comedian. He's on the spectrum. He actually just put out a show called Neurospicy.
Yeah.
So he knew that I wanted to be a keynote speaker and be on stage. And he was like, 5 minutes of meeting me, he's like, have you ever thought about doing stand-up? I was like, why on earth would I do that? He's like, because I think you'd be really good at it and it will help you develop skills to be on stage better and it'll look really good on your resume. And I was like, okay, that tracks. He's like, do you have any trauma in your life? I said, how long do you have for lunch? And that was kind of the end of it. So he talked me into going to the class that he had been going to. And one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Like, there's even a part in there that was like this. So I used to be an ex-stripper. And I talk about the correlation of trauma and how I ended up on the pole. And there's a part in there that I talk about that this is way harder. I would much rather stand up here and take off my clothes in front of you fuckers than to try to make you laugh. You know, the people who do stand up are insane. Like, what happened to you? Like, it is truly a whole new level of vulnerability.
I don't doubt it. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah. So I had no expectations. Turns out I'm actually kind of good at it. And I'm having fun with it. Like, when you do get the right crowds, not all the crowds are the right crowds, but when you do get the right crowds, especially the Moms Unhinged, because they are mostly women and they are women who come to laugh. That's the thing about women in comedy too. And that's why she did that, is because comedy still is like 90% men, only 10% women. And if the crowds can be that way too, they can be young, male. And so if you're, as a female, if I'm talking about my experiences of being a mom or going through menopause, right? They're looking at me like I've got two heads and I don't get a single laugh. So then I would walk out of that room thinking that I'm not funny. No. You put me in the right crowd in front of the right people and I'm killing it. And it's so much fun. And then these women come up to you afterwards and they're like, oh my God. See, because I try to put functional medicine into my comedy. I talk about trauma and brain inflammation and coffee enemas. And so I get people who come up to me afterwards and go, oh, I love the way you talked about autoimmune. And I have a transgendered son. And, just being seen, talking about things that, like I said, most people aren't talking about it. It really helps people feel validated.
I mean, anytime that we can make other people feel seen, I think is always a good thing. But I love that, like, it's totally unexpected for you. Like, it wasn't even your idea. It was somebody else's idea. And you're like, sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I feel kind of bad because here I'm working with some of these. So I'm doing these open mics with some of these comics who have been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And like, it's been my dream ever since I was little. And they're like, still nowhere near kind of at the level that I am. And I just kind of fell into it. So there's just a little bit of a guilt around that, but it doesn't last long. Cause like I said, nothing has been easy in my life. I've definitely paid my dues in other areas. So I will happily accept an easy pathway.
Yeah. And since you brought up being a mom and having a transgender son, do you have any advice for other moms that might have children that are thinking about or are transgender?
Ooh, that's a good question. One thing that I say right now is if I would have known now what I knew then, I would have spent a year detoxing him and healing his gut and supporting his nutrition better before letting him transition. Because like I said, knowing what I know now, I can almost guarantee he's got atrazine in his system. Atrazine is a commonly used herbicide that they're finding in the water that have been known to cause boy frogs to turn into girl frogs. Like this is happening in our environment. So don't tell me that these sort of chemicals and toxins couldn't disrupt a human's hormonal system, right? Like that would be just asinine to think that it wouldn't. So, like I said, I personally would be like, give me a year. Let's change our diet. Let's clean things up. Let's detox you. Let's check you for heavy metals, other environmental toxins. There's labs for that. I actually am running a lab like that right now on somebody. So I would start there a good solid year. And then if they were still, this is my path, this is my truth, absolutely, I would support them 110%. They're still your kid no matter what, right? And the transition, the kids, it's sad because there's still such a huge group of people who aren't accepted or tolerated, and a lot of them end up on the streets. They end up homeless. And just accepting your kids where they are and loving them, unconditionally, and helping them support them. So yeah, it's not an easy route at all, especially in this world, in this day and age. I mean, we just freaking elected somebody who basically wants to take away all transgender rights as, minorities. And it pisses me off because I'm not sure my kid would still be alive if we weren't allowed to let him transition at the age that we did, because he had 2 suicide attempts before that. And then after we let him start transitioning, he stopped attempting suicide, and he's never had a suicide attempt since. So it's scary out there right now.
Yeah, I think we've really lost what it's like to love each other. I remember when I first read Lovability by Dr. Holden, how hard it hit me. And I tell people all the time to read that book because it really is a reminder that if we led with love first, this world would be a completely different place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hurt people.
They do, unfortunately, but we can just try. All we can do is we can start the love here and then just hope that it permeates out.
Absolutely. 110%.
So people who do want to work with you and get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I am the Renegade Health Boss across all platforms, website, podcast. I do have like a low cost discovery call, 15 minutes just to see if what I do is a fit for you, because I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And, it's good to know that before you kind of start doing the really hard work together, because you and I'm completely changing your life for the next couple of months. And so we need to know that you're on board, that you're ready to go, that you've got the mindset, and that, our personalities will jive well. Because what I'm going to ask you to do is not easy, but it is absolutely life-changing. Yeah.
We
so
thought about that too.
REAL will do real. And that'll get $100 off my Foundations of Health course. So when I was talking about dialing in those foundations, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, plus I have a added bonus video on toxins, and it's got my 7-video cooking series. So that $100 off comes up to a $79 course. And I'm telling you, the amount of information you're going to learn will absolutely change your life. And the $79 is a drop in the bucket. So
yeah.
I'll send you that link so you can put it in the show notes.
Perfect. Sounds fantastic. And for anybody that wants to see your comedy, where can we find you?
So on renegadehealthboss.com, there's a comedy page, and there's a list of venues and stuff. Everything I have for the rest of this year so far is local. I'm hoping to travel more next year. I did get to perform in Phoenix, Arizona this year. That was a ton of fun. But so far, mostly just in the Colorado area.
Well, our listeners in Colorado, go check out Heather.
Absolutely.
Any final advice or anything you want to leave our listeners with before we say goodbye for the evening?
Yes, that if you have dealt with chronic illness, chronic issues, autoimmune, mental health issues, don't give up. It took me 27 years to get diagnosed, and I've gone through bankruptcy twice, getting better. And I have traveled across the continent this year. I became a stand-up comedian. I am living life at a level that I didn't even know was possible. So you've been through 20 practitioners, no one can give you any answers. Great. You've learned what doesn't work. Next, right? Keep going and don't give up. And don't do the DIY thing either, because it'll take you 10 times longer and it'll end up costing you more money in the long run. Working with someone who's been there and that can help coach you along the way and teach you the foundations really it's gonna go miles. If you run into a functional practitioner, and there's a lot of them that do, that have just kind of like greenwashed, where they're just switching out prescriptions for supplements, run. You're just going to make really expensive pee. Like, it's not really getting to the root cause. So, making sure that you're digging deep with somebody who's looking in all aspects of your life.
Love it. Thank you so much, Heather, for spending this time with me.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was coherent. I'm feeling a little discombobulated, but hopefully it all made sense.
No, it definitely made sense. Super helpful information. And as I always say, if we help at least one person, it was worth it.
That's why I do it.
And this is how to deal when the shit gets real, guys. I'll see you all next episode.